Good evening and welcome to this episode of Classic Car Restoration Club Q&A Live. I'm Mark Simpson. I'm joined by Ross Keel and Terry Wright again. We're looking forward to answering as many of your questions as possible. Although, like always, if we don't have the answer, um, we don't necessarily, we're not going to sit here and profess to know the answer to everything. So you guys are just as important to this conversation. So if we get stumped good, feel free to go down into the chat roll down below and type in if you have any input you'd like to share with the group as far as what the answer is to this person's problem. I like to think of it as an interactive sort of exchange, so it's a good thing. Then further down below, not way over in the corner where it says chat. That's the button to talk to. If you're having a problem with your membership or whatever. But in the box that says type a message to and press enter. That's where you can ask us the questions. Below that is another box for a free download, and that's a PDF we've put together of some classic car terminology and basically some of the slang that's used around classic cars and help you guys out and try if you ever run into anything that you can't quite figure out what they're saying, or if you come up with something that we haven't added to the list, let us know. With that, we're going to get started. Hopefully you guys are, I know us in the northern climates are really looking forward to seeing some of this white stuff melt.
Not anytime soon.
I know most of the U.S. isn't covered with a blanket of 2 feet of snow, but here is a different story, and we have more snow coming. We're hoping someday to actually be able to pull our cars out of the garage again. Although we do have our good buddy Pat, who did have his Mustang out recently as last week as he drove over here for a little video shoot. So for the rest of us, less adventurous, he is brave. He's a lot braver than us. And the rest of us, we're hoping to be out there soon. And we know we don't have to get that far out of the north, and there is no snow anymore. It's just up here in the cold north. We wait a lot longer for spring to come. So, but we've got the itch.
Yeah, that's right.
I definitely do.
Definitely do.
Okay, I'm going to get started, guys. The first question came in from Robert Kelly. He says, I've been working on his 67 Austin Healey for a while now. He started by doing the brakes and worked on everything except starting the engine, which ran when he parked the car 10 years ago. So it's been 10 years since he's cranked this car over. And now the engine is really stuck. And I'm wondering if it's better to pull it out and send it for a rebuild or keep on trying to work it free. All right, I'll let you guys start with this one.
I have tried to free a few motors, and I would suggest pulling the head to start with.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if you don't really want to crank on the crankshaft too hard, if he's already tried it, I'm sure, with a breaker bar or something, but you might want to first lube up the cylinders with the many different things you can use.
Let's talk about that. What can you use?
I think like PB Blaster, Marvelous Mystery Oil,
Marvel Mystery Oil,
or maybe some
50-50 mix of ATF and acetone is one that's real popular. I think there was
that a lot.
Yeah, that one's real popular because they did some scientific studies that kind of outdid a lot of the commercially available stuff. But there's some great penetrating stuff out there. I would try that first. I just give it a good squirt down all. Usually what happens, what seizes them up is when you stop that engine, you don't idle it. Some of your intake valves are still open. Some of your exhaust valves are still open. And the air, when it gets humid and hot, or when it gets hot and cold, as the temperature cycles, if it's not in a climate controlled area, what happens is you start getting rust inside your cylinder walls. And that rust, it's not detrimental. If you can get the engine to turn over, it will usually clear itself off. But it starts to build up enough oxidation inside the cylinder walls where it doesn't want to crank. The rings hit that, and it says, no, I'm not going there. The best idea is to hit penetrating oil, some sort of lubricant to break it loose, and then kind of work it both ways. Work it, turn it one way, turn it the other way, turn it, and that's, usually you can do it off the crankshaft bolt on your lower pulley. Don't want to snap that bugger off. Don't get out a 8-foot crowbar and then like suddenly you've got a snapped off bolt in the end of your crankshaft, so now you have to pull it in. So just kind of you kind of work it back and forth a little bit, and hopefully it starts to seize up. I know guys that in the past that have old Hemi engines where they just kind of like took it out, put a strap on it, and they went had somebody pulling them down the road, and they dropped the clutch a half a dozen times, and they would eventually break free, or something would break. But usually, what happens then is they end up messing up so many of the rings that it's a puffer after that anyway.
And valves.
Yeah. So there are things you got to worry about doing that. If you can't get her to go, like Ross says, on a Austin Healy, pull ahead and sometimes I've had luck before pulling the head and then going in and cleaning, it could even be right down to steel wool or bronze wool, and doing some work to get the oxidation out, and then cleaning out real well before you turn it over. But cleaning out those cylinders really well, then a lot of times it'll go, but odds are the part that's stuck is the cylinder.
A lot of times, take a piece, I've done it where I've just taken a piece of wood, and just, as somebody's turning the crank, just kind of tap on it, trying to hit it down or whatever.
Down or up, or get some movement going.
Get some movement going, because that's what's seized on it is always the cylinder rings. And so.
Yep.
Yours wasn't seized.
Mine was not seized, no, but I did have some rust in a cylinder or two because it did sit for so long. And it ran with that rust in it.
Yeah, it's not unusual. Yeah, it's even if it's surprising, even really pitted engines will run.
Yeah, it'll pop though.
You're still getting oil bypass and all that stuff, but like I say, I would, don't give up hope right away breaking it free. But
what have you got to lose?
Yeah,
if you're gonna rebuild it anyway, what do you got to lose to try to loosen it up? I would definitely soak it down and let it soak it.
Yeah, and that's just a matter of pulling the spark plugs and squirting,
You can even take and inspect with an inspection camera.
Just
look in there and see what it looks like.
See
how bad it is.
All right. Ron writes, he has have you or anyone in the classic car community promoted a certification program that would reward persons for working in the auto restoration field? It could be a master, like a master restorer, I suppose, who has restored a wide range of vehicles during a long period of time, to an apprentice who has recently graduated from a technical school and chose to enter the auto restoration field rather than work in collision shop. This comes from Ron, who's the owner and managing director of a classic car restoration club in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, hey, Ron, thanks for writing in. Yeah, I think the idea has merit. Trying to figure out how, I know like the auto industry has a number of certification systems, ASE, ICAR. There are a number of different kind of certification processes that usually involve testing people's skill, as well as for some, it requires some level of experience in the field or need to be working in the field to do that. I'm not sure how it gets done. I love the idea, and I love the idea of having a threshold of knowledge, but there almost has to be some sort of testing involved to quantify a master restore kind of thing, or some sort of independent measure of whether this, because I've known guys who've done it 40 years, but I would never bring them my car. But on the other hand, I've known young guys that have done it 5 years that, do amazing work. So to me, it's like, I think the idea itself has good merit. But I don't, like I say, it would take somebody to really get on board with it and
measure it. Really, I mean, how would you measure what they've done? I suppose from videos, but
and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how Well, like they do measure knowledge.
Yes.
But knowledge and skills can be two different things, especially when it comes to restoration. Knowing how to hammer and weld and fabricate metal is one thing. Actually doing it is another.
Right.
So I don't know. I think the idea has merit, but it's going to take some real head scratching to figure out how to pull that one off.
Yeah. How do you measure it?
Yeah, and it's probably so limited as far as participants that it may not be economical to pursue something like that too. I don't know, but I mean, I'd like that, rewarding somebody that's good in the field, but it's such a specialized field that it might not be enough to get big.
It would be, if you could get like enough of the places that actually teach that, because like a lot of the Wiotech, the Votex, and the schools that teach these principles, all they preach the ASE, they preach the ICAR, they have they start that like ICAR certifications even in school. So it would be the kind of thing where you'd have to develop like certifications for different levels of restoration techniques and start that at the school process. It would be a big undertaking for sure. By the time you really look at it, for it to really mean anything, I don't know. It's I don't know how you pull it up, but I like the idea. Edward writes that he has a 1969 Roadrunner with a 383 4-speed with blank headers. He doesn't know what they are, or he's got a exclamation point.
He's not happy.
The starter went out. I have a starter unhooked, but caught between the header pipes and the block.
Yeah.
The header is unbolted, but I can't get it out. So the starter is essentially trapped in a cage. I'm not laughing at you, Edward. We've all been here, I pulled the motor mount bolt on the driver's side and tried to jack the engine up to squeeze it out. Well, that's it. If you can get enough movement. That's it. I would do the same. Still not enough room. Any ideas short of pulling the steering box? So yeah, it's on the driver's
Right
side.
down there. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're between steering arms and well, if he's got a 4-speed, so you've got clutch
Z-bars
linkage,
in there, yeah.
clutch linkage, and shifter linkage, and
I am,
who knows what all he's got going on in a very tight area.
yeah, 'cause it's mechanical.
Any ideas short of pulling the steering box and column or the entire engine?
You should be able to get a header in and out of there, shouldn't you?
Well,
No?
Jeff's got the same setup in his Charger, and I know I'm taking that starter out without pulling the motor. I think it's just a matter of, I mean, is the header unbolted from?
Just the head and not the pipes, or
Right,
I'd take
that's
the whole
what I'm
header
wondering.
out if
Take
you
the
had
whole
to.
header, unbolt your flange.
Unbolt the flange and unbolt
And
the
then
header
everything so you can-
and kind of finagle the whole header out of
Right,
there.
right.
Kind of like we had to do in Pat's car recently, just get the whole header out of the way in order to work on things.
Yeah, because those, the most part of the headers go up and down, and that steering box is right there too. I know it's a nightmare, but I know I've never pulled this motor to replace a starter in it. And for this person who's replacing a bad starter, I would go with a gear reduction starter because they're half the size. You can just throw them right in after
Yes,
that.
the gear reduction starter is a definite,
Yes,
unless you're a
no.
diehard restoration guy, and we have
Right.
those amongst us. The gear reduction starter,
Oh,
a fraction of the weight and, twice the power.
and Mopar is a gear reduction starter, but they're
Is it?
huge and they weigh a ton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so. But it's, yeah, I mean.
The
once you
header's
get it
got to
out-
be able to come out. It's got to be.
I would
Well,
say,
yeah.
yeah, the headers went in, the headers got to
Possible
come
that
back
you
out.
might have
and-
to jack the car up and bring them down out of there from up top, but
I
don't think
have
so.
seen cases in order to get the header in and out, you gotta take one mount and get,
Right.
get yourself an inch or two. But I would say you're, without, and if you're listening, you want to add, we've got, I would think if you removed the header flange and removed all the bolts, now Mopars, of course, they've got the heads that stick straight out kind of thing. So everything kind of gets stuck in that cage kind of deal. I know where he's at, but I think you can, get the header out.
Yeah.
In a worst case scenario, it's got to come forward some and then curl
Yeah.
up. And
I mean, especially if you got the motor mount already off of there, the bolt out of it. Should be able to unflange, take the flange gas or the bolts out of there, and you should be able to get that out of there.
yeah, I don't think he has to take his steering box out. That seems like overkill, but I would do that first. Sorry you're having no problem. We've all been there though. We've all been in those
Can picture it.
situations. What?
I can picture it.
Yeah, we can all envision it. We've all been under the car trying to get, even without headers on stock exhaust. I've had cars where it's a pain to get that thing out of there, get the starter out. Ben says, hello, what is the difference between an amp gauge and a voltmeter? Motor is a 350 Chevy with an alternator. Which should I install? The amp meter measures the direction of current. It tells you if from the alternator or, basically it's going to give you information whether the energy is going away from the battery or going to the battery, or if you're in a static state where, your alternator is keeping up with the electrical demands of the car. So it's either reading discharge if, the electricity is going away from the battery, or it's reading charge if it's going to the battery. When you first start it with an amp meter, it should go to charge, and then once it regains its charge, it should go pretty much back to a static state. A voltmeter tells you something totally different. It tells you how many volts are in the system.
I myself on a vehicle, a voltmeter is more simple.
Yeah, I think, my only issue with a voltmeter, well, I think both gauges are good. They tell you something. A voltmeter will tell you what the current state of your entire electrical system, what the voltage is of your electrical system. Right after you start and your alternator is cranking away, it might read 14 volts or whatever, but then it's going to drop down to, 13.2 or 13.5 or, and then you don't get alarmed until, you start dropping into the 12s and the 12.6s and stuff like that. So, but it's not telling you until the bad thing with a voltmeter, it's not telling you until you've discharged to that point. So you don't know that you have a problem until it starts getting weaker. And older classics on a 12-volt system will still run on to like 10 volts or something somewhere in there before they start having real issues. But so I think both gauges have merit.
I think if you're using an amp meter or an amp, it's still the same. I mean, if there's no amps being put out by your alternator, then you got some issues because you're going to be down to 0 amps pretty much.
Yeah, well, it's gonna read full discharge because you're going to be drawing power from your battery to run.
So there's 0 amps coming out of your alternator or less. I mean, it's not going to go negative too.
So if I had, now his question is, of course, which should he install?
I don't know. I mean, I look at all new cars and all they got is a voltmeter in them. I mean,
yeah, a lot of new cars have gone away from the amp meter.
Yeah, it was the old.
And now they just have a voltmeter in there.
You're watching the same thing, really. I mean, you're monitoring the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, voltmeters for people that, amps for people wouldn't go on what's that. If he says volts, you kind of go, okay, I got a 12-volt battery and it's saying 9 volts. It's not good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Simpler. I mean,
Your thoughts, Terry?
Which should we talk about it? Well,
you have to pick one.
It all depends.
Yeah, you'll be like, what did it come with?
Yeah, what did it come with?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if any, even my SS dash with that, it had all the gauges in it. It was just a voltmeter. If I
Was it a
remember.
voltmeter? Mine's an amp meter, so it's charge, discharge.
Your factory one is?
Yeah, and the only time I really see it move is when I have my signal on and it goes. Doot, doot,
Yeah.
It'll catch. It'll react to the signals going on and off. If I didn't have any, just had an idiot light and wanted one, I'd probably go with a voltmeter. If I was putting an aftermarket gauge in, voltmeter, why not? See what's happening in the system. It seems to me like that's more.
I guess if it's
modern.
stock, I mean, I'd want to leave it that way too.
If you had to replace a stock one, I would go. Obviously, I would go stock.
Yeah,
but
I kind of.
no matter what.
Yeah, and on the street rod stuff where I've built, I've always gone with a voltmeter. I don't have a preference necessarily one or the other. I think having something to tell you what's going on with your electrical system is an important thing. But I think you'll find in most aftermarket gauge sets, they don't even include an amp meter. They include a voltmeter. Yeah.
Also, I believe as far as wiring them too, it's wired differently than your obviously your voltmeter is measuring volts, and this is measuring your load.
They are distinctively wired different.
Yeah.
The amp meter is pass through. Actually, even like this 57 back here, the gauge itself isn't even. There's no terminals on the back of the amp meter on this car.
Right.
There's just a loop, and the wire passes through the loop.
Yep.
And that measures the direction of current. So that's where you can get really messed up when you have a car completely apart and you have to rewire it all back together.
Right.
You need to have that going through the right direction.
That's true.
But it's the Yeah, which one should you pick? I think whatever you're comfortable. I think most aftermarket gauge sets, if you buy a set of gauges, they're going to come with a voltmeter. And for me, when I bought gauge sets before, I don't while Classic Instruments and those companies also offer an amp meter. Their standard sets come with just a voltmeter, and I'm fine with just a voltmeter personally. David writes he has a newly rebuilt 8BA Ford flathead engine, so it's a later flathead. What are your thoughts on zinc oil additives and lead substitutes for gasoline additives? Okay, well, just a quick thought on what the zinc and what the lead did. What the zinc did in gasoline. A lot of these additives were like the lead was added to gasoline to bring up the octane rating cheaper. That's why the lead was originally added to the gasoline. The zinc was an additive that was formulated to the engine to help prevent wear inside the engine. The zinc was taken out because it clogged up catalytic converters because there's always a small percentage of oil that's getting burnt through the engine all the time. So they took the zinc out. The lead was taken out because all the harmful effects of lead in the environment, and that makes good sense. What did what did they do in the engine while they were burning the lead? An unplanned for side effect of the lead was put in there to bring up the octane. What lead did, though, was in the exhaust seats of the engine as the burnt fuel was exposed. It provided a microscopic layer of lead protection to keep the hot exhaust valve from welding to the exhaust seat. And those little micro welds, as it would, the valve would come open and close and open and close, and it would weld itself each time, just microscopically, but over time it would erode the valve seat. So then what happened was when they first took the lead out, a lot of places said, well, here's the answer. We'll machine out your valve seats and we'll put in hardened seats, and then so then it would be more difficult for that valve to weld itself on. What a lot of people have done instead is just switch over to using stainless steel exhaust valves, which will get the same job done, and you don't have to machine. Some guys still machine out all their valve seats and have them, hardened seats put in. You don't need to go that route, especially for if it's not a full-time used car. And as far as the zinc, when they first took the zinc out, the people who were just breaking it in brand new rebuilt engines suddenly started shearing all the lobes off their camshaft.
Okay.
And they were just tearing them up right and left. And the way, are zinc additives good in older flat tappet motors? Roller motors don't need it. They don't have the issues. It's the old flat tappet, flat lifter engine, whether it be solids or hydraulic. Those are the engines that really took a beating when they took the zinc out, and right away, brand new engines were dropping left and right. I do recommend. My personal preference is to throw in zinc into those any flat tappet. Even while I know they say, oh, you only need it when you're breaking in. I disagree. I put it in.
I mean, it's
all the time.
I know. Yeah. I mean, if you'd be out of flat tappet one, I would always use it. I mean,
I don't know if it said or specified in here, but I think so. The zinc, we're talking about that additive in the oil, correct?
Yep.
And then the lead is
the zinc.
gasoline.
What are your thoughts on zinc oil additives and lead substitutes for gasoline?
Yeah, he had it right in there. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So I kind of dealt with that with my motor too, and when I had it rebuilt, there was questions and thoughts about putting hardened seats in. And it's just the exhaust valves, right? That really need it, not the intake. So,
Yep.
I'm surprised if we had it rebuilt that they wouldn't have put hardened seats in it.
So I was in the same boat, and my engine builder said, asked if I wanted it, and I had some conversations with some friends, and depending on, mostly I asked how I was going to use it, and I'm not drag racing this thing, and we decided I wasn't going to put hardened seats in, but the builder did put stainless steel valves in, so that took care of that issue, and I didn't even know he was going to. He didn't even bring it up; he just automatically did it. So thank you for doing that.
Because you will have issues
Yeah.
if you don't use an additive.
And I do put a fuel additive in for some upper cylinder lubricant, and not just for valve
Like
recession, but for
like
ring.
the lead substitute.
Yeah. I use one that's kind of, it's not very widely known. It's a gentleman out of Ohio that has his own chemical company. I don't know if I can even say what it is, but it doesn't matter. But I've also heard going down that road or that line of thought in forums that some guys are using outboard marine oil at like an ounce
Like
per
two-
5
like
gallons.
2-cycle oil.
2-cycle oil, outboard 2-cycle oil
Yeah.
for upper cylinder lubricant.
Just a little bit
Just
in there.
a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was an ounce per 5 gallons. I think that was what was decided on for being just enough to get a little upper cylinder lubricant. I'm kind of tossing that one around if I want to try or not. And a quarter gallon of that is cheap compared to any additive. So I don't know. It might be worth doing a little research on it. I use a Valvoline VR one that has as much zinc as we can get in them right now. I've used diesel oil, which is usually high in zinc.
That used to be really high zinc, and then and you guys that are running diesel oil, be aware that they did, while diesel oil originally had tons and tons of zinc in it, they have cut that way back.
Yeah.
So you may be better off, I know we're using like the driven HR whatever, the driven series oil that has a ton of zinc in it. The Valvoline VR has got like good zinc amounts in it. There are a number of
I think Napa, what is that? There was something I know they tested a bunch of different oils on.
or or you can go straight up buy a zinc additive like the ZDDP additive. If you have a brand of oil that you prefer to use, they do make additives that you can add to any oil. I typically buy the oil that has the zinc in it. I don't, because what they charge for zinc additives isn't cheap either.
Right.
So it usually turns out to be a wash. Or even actually it turns out to be cheaper if I just buy the oil with the zinc already in it. I recommend use the zinc, and if you were still running steel exhaust valves and your old flathead, not a bad idea to add a lead additive, or you can add actual lead to it, but they make some products that will replace that. So that would help with, if you don't want to go through a whole rebuild right now. Otherwise, my recommendation is, for most classic cars, you'd be fine if you just change out the exhaust valve to stainless steel. And I know they've got them for flatheads, so it should be easy to solve in that manner.
As far as oil goes, it would probably work out even better if it was filtered through a really cool oil filter.
Well, in case you missed it last month, Terry showed us how to make a oil filter that looked just like the factory original. It's you can always go back and look at that segment.
Now you have to.
It was a cool in our show and tell segment. Terry showed us how he didn't like buying reproduction of the original oil filters because he didn't know what kind of elements were in the filter. So he bought his name brand, and then he repainted it and had some special decals to make it look like a factory original oil filter, and it came out pretty nice. I know he instantly got an order for 4 that he hasn't filled so far.
I won't be filling that order either, if you're watching.
And as long as we have reached our halfway point in the show, it's time for Ross's show and tell.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Terry did show and tell on his oil filter last time. It's time for Ross to do his.
Well, I've got a little product here that I thought it'd show. It's called the Grip Mat, and it's like a really soft, pliable, sticky rubber almost.
Like a silicone rubber kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like a silicone rubber,
that real
and
sticky kind
flexible.
of feel to it.
And this is great for like if you're working under your hood and you can't find anywhere to set your bolts or anything you're going to use. This thing, like, it's stuck to everything. Everything you put on it doesn't move.
And you can that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
It's like you get you got some places for things. You can throw you put nuts and bolts in it. It's got nice high sides, and you get to sit that on top of your fender, on top of your air cleaner, anywhere. Core support.
Fender well, it'll sit there.
Yeah, there you go.
And look at you've got it at a heck of an angle,
Yeah.
and nothing's falling out of it.
That's
Even
pretty
the
cool.
wrench up here is just hanging on. It sticks to it.
Yeah, it's a cool product. I mean,
I probably wouldn't throw it on top of my fender because I'm a paint guy, but
that's right. I wouldn't
put
a
a,
fender.
put a,
I usually have a fender cover on.
yeah, then it would be fine. Then it's
And it won't
okay.
stick to that.
Then it's okay.
And it
That's
gives you
pretty
that
cool.
little bit of extra cushion, so when you drop your wrench in there, you're not going to chip your fender
chip
underneath.
my
When you
paint.
throw it.
When you throw that wrench across the
Yeah, so it's a
That's
cool
pretty
product.
cool. That's cool.
Amazon, there's different types of them, and
Different sizes.
different sizes. I'm looking up there. Nice little.
What I like about it, even over a fender cover, is like what I hate about fender covers is most of them have like a fabric backing.
Yeah.
And you can pick, you're in a garage for crying out loud,
Oh,
so they
yeah.
get dirt in them, and then you got to worry about always scratching your fender. This is like a silicone rubber.
Clean
You
that
can
off
just
pretty easy.
clean that,
Yeah.
a little bit of window
and
cleaner.
It sticks really well. So
Yep.
it's a cool product.
Great
Yeah.
product. Check that out. Check that out,
Nice.
guys. Make your life under the hood a little bit easier. Okay. Mad Dog Bobby, we hear you. He writes, I have a 89 F-150 with a 5.0 EFI. Is it practical to convert it to a carburetor fuel system and go to an old school ignition system? I'd like to get rid of the computer on it.
Is he related to me? He's trying to get rid of.
Yeah, he doesn't like computers. He doesn't like computers. He can't be related to you because he wants to change it from stock.
Those I think are pretty reliable. I always thought the 5.0.
The 5.0 EFI.
I've never known them to have a real issue with that.
Yeah, I don't know offhand. I don't know personally offhand. Changing from EFI to a carburetor, there's a whole bunch of things you got to concern yourself with. Your fuel, on a carburetor, you only need 7 to 9 psi of fuel pressure, where the EFI, you're at what, 60?
Right. I just don't think it makes sense anyway.
About the easiest. Yeah, well, like any, a hot rodder at heart. So I say, yeah, it's possible. Anything's possible. There's a number of things you need to, like the fuel system is different.
And you're going to have all kinds of idiot lights on.
Yeah. That's the next thing is like the computer, the engine control management system is pretty much going to be out the door.
Yeah.
and you're going to need to change that all over,
because everything runs through that thing.
or convert it to an old, for grab parts off an older model, an early
Yeah.
80s one.
It doesn't have the
Not that those
the EFI.
computers were all that great. I think Ford had a
They're pretty
Bronco that
basic.
had one, had a computer under the front seat that was as big as a PC is. But they were carbureted, and they had that screwy stuff, the variable Venturi carburetors and all those kind of things going on. But, I think if you could grab parts from just an early 80s model, that a carbureted early 80s, it would probably help. But there's still a lot of things,
wiring,
all
all
your
that
idiot
wiring.
lights and all that stuff are controlled by the ECM, what sets them off. So I don't know, you're in for a challenge. Can it be done? I have no doubt it can be done. And I have no doubt somebody's made a kit that I can plug something into my ECM so it would allow me to do that. Do I know offhand what that is? I don't know.
I don't.
If you know, if any of you know, feel free to type down below and we'll add that to the conversation. I have not personally done this kind of conversion. I know most people want to
I just
convert
think you're
from
going
carburetor
Yeah, you're going
to
backwards.
an electronic fuel injection.
It's not backwards.
It's backwards.
Yeah. But
I mean, it
stop
never
guys.
came with that. Now
Stop it. So, is it possible? I suspect it is. Do a little research on it. I'm sure somebody's done it and somebody can tell you exactly what you're going to need. I don't know personally offhand what you need to make the conversion, though. The Rex writes, old unused engine. You mentioned take the head off to head off and clean cylinders and lube. What about the other moving parts, bearings, etc.? Yeah, an engine that's not been moved for a long time, it pays to pressurize the oiling system.
Didn't just if you can prime it and get some oil
before you start cranking it over. We were concerned with why it was stuck, but there are a number of things you should do before you start up an engine that's been sitting normally inside the crankcase, because everything's coated with oil and everything else. Very rare for I've pulled a lot of engines out of junkyards that haven't run in 50 years, and inside the crankcase, it's surprisingly how rare it is to have rust inside the crankcase, unless there's unless it's sitting in a junkyard with the valve covers off and all the rainwater is going down inside the crankcase. It's very rare to get any kind of real corrosion inside the crankcase itself.
That's a good point you bring up, because if you were to take one apart and you did find water, then that would raise questions like, maybe I have a cracked block or something, because there shouldn't be any in there, right?
Yeah.
I think you got a little off track here. I'm sorry.
Anything's possible. The guy with Austin Healy didn't necessarily specify where he lived.
Right.
So
you're living in a climate like here.
If maybe the antifreeze or whatever was in the system and it didn't, antifreeze over time diminishes in its ability to protect from freezing. And if it was, sat out in, like Minnesota weather where it gets down to 25 below, it could easily freeze and crack the block and have, those
I've had it happen to me.
Those kinds of issues happening. Certainly before you start any, and actually we have some videos on the site where I had the 31 DeSoto in the shop here that thing hadn't started in 40 years, and 30 years at least. And we kind of went on through those videos on everything we needed to do before we actually put spark to the engine and tried to fire it up. And that included, cleaning out all the fuel lines and cleaning out the carburetor and pressurizing the oiling system and a lot of steps to go through rather than just hop in, charge up the battery and turn the key and expect you're not going to have any issues. Again, the issue with the Austin was that it was stuck. So, we were just addressing how to get it unstuck, which is really hard. And he writes, what is the best lube? And what about other moving parts, bearing? What is the best lube what is the best lube for an engine and then started for a while? Engine oil, probably best
He's
thing.
just asking what's best to lube.
What's
So more or less
best to
saying,
lube?
what should he lube? I
Oh,
think.
just pressurized oil system.
Yeah, pressurize it.
Pressurized oil
Pour
system.
some oil.
You might want to fog your
Cam.
cylinder. Pull the spark plug, even if it's not stuck.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a bad idea to just kind of fog your upper cylinders with a little bit of oil before you start going. Yeah, those are about your biggest concerns with lubrication.
That's what I do when I put mine away, is just fog the cylinders, rotate it up
And if you can
a couple
maybe-
times, and then make sure then let it sit.
Yep.
And then change the plugs after I fire it up the next
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, and if you are going to let an engine sit for an extended period of years,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of times, nobody puts, a lot of cars get put away. Nobody's thinking, I'm not going to drive it again for 30 years. They're thinking, I'll have it out again next year. But then, life happens and things end up just sitting for a long period of time.
I hear guys who are restoring their cars that have already got their engines rebuilt and sitting on a stand and ready to go. And when they finally get it ready to go, it's seized up.
Yep.
Brand new.
I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
Brand new rebuilds because, especially brand new rebuilds because they haven't broke in
Everything's
anything
new.
yet.
Yeah. Tape.
Okay. Lynn on YouTube asks, how hard is it to install the Holley retrofit fuel tank pump for an EFI Sniper on a 67 Mustang? Why would anybody build a 67 Mustang? Pat?
Tell us how to do it.
No, we're kidding, Lynn.
It shouldn't be too bad.
I'm
Be a wreck fit for
I mean, it's a
I'm not,
retrofit, right?
I'm
The
not,
EFI snipers. It's
and I'm not, I have not done a sniper. We talked about doing a sniper on a few projects so far. We have not done one
I
yet.
believe it's a retrofit kit that you drop it right in where your
Right in
sender.
the fuel
same-
sender unit?
Yeah, fuel sender.
And that would make sense,
Yeah.
that they would manufacture,
And you have to have supply and returns for that system, new fuel lines.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're going to need,
Yeah.
I don't know, I think it's at least 2 because you have a supply and return bypass. But yeah,
I know.
think it
Well,
all
yeah, and there was one system out there where it actually drew the pump was not in, the high pressure pump was not
not
in
the tank.
the tank, but there was like a reservoir tank where it would actually
Up and
midway
front
up
or something, yeah.
where it would recirculate from there. Bottom line is, I'm not sure.
Sounds like it's a retrofit
I
fuel
would-
tank
I would-
fuel pump.
Yeah, I would guess, Holley builds good stuff, they've taken over most of the industry at this point. And, they have good products and good stuff. And, I wouldn't, I would trust their technicians better than me to give you the advice on what exactly you're going to need. They do have good customer service too. And I know it's kind of an easy pass along, but knowing some of our friends over there at Holley, I know they stand behind their products and they're ready to give you whatever advice you can get on what you're going to need to install it in your project. Some guy named Wop writes, "I'm watching and I hate computers." Huh. Well, most guys like his age do hate computers.
Yeah, he is old though.
Yeah, he is old. Yeah, you can tell by the gray hair. All right. Also, before I forget about it again, I like to mention at least a couple times. Down below here, we have our terminology guide, and it's a free download. Just go down there, you can click on it and get that. It's kind of some neat information, some cool insights about different terminology used in car restoration hobby. Okay, James writes, you were discussing additives. I've been using Marble Mystery Oil in my oil and gas for 60 years.
I've heard of that.
I know people who are religious
by that
about it.
stuff.
Yeah.
Also, I use MOS2 molybdenum additive in my oil. All of my engines have 400 to 500,000.
Wow.
Wow, he's got you beat.
Is it dust?
You're working on getting
Wow.
300,000 out of them.
That's impressive.
And no oil usage or engine noise. Wow, that's impressive. Rust eats up my vehicles before the engine goes. So you live in Minnesota?
That's impressive.
I was an engineer at
60 years.
Navatar, and we used tested a lot of additive.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I I have used Marble Mystery Oil usually in small engines and stuff.
Yeah.
I can't.
You never use it as an additive.
I've never used it as an additive
Interesting.
I've used it in additives in small engines, usually when I'm
Instead of working my
storing
big
stuff.
block. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you could use it in a big block. Maybe it'll,
Talk to Kenny.
I've seen that come up quite a bit, and people just swearing by that.
Marble Mystery
I've
Oil.
heard just by using it as a lubricant, but I've never really heard it putting it in your oil.
I've heard of people putting it in their gas and their oil.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I haven't. I don't do it. Like I said, I do use it in like my ATVs and stuff like that, but I have never done it like on the classic cars. Although I know guys who swear by it in their classic cars. I haven't seen any testing either way on it.
Maybe nobody wants us to know.
Yeah, maybe that's the
Manufacturers.
secret. They're keeping us in the dark because the engine manufacturers, they want us to buy. The car manufacturers want us to buy new cars, so they don't want us to know about it.
And you're breaking stuff anyway, so you're replacing.
Yeah, because you're always out your foot. You're too far into the throttle.
I didn't break anything.
Yet.
Just belts and
It's because it's winter.
belts falling off.
Bottom line, Ross hasn't broken anything because it's winter. So now that we've got to the bottom of that problem.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that.
Okay, guys, if you got any more questions, feel free. I've got a couple here that to throw out to you guys. This one came in just yesterday. And a member writes, okay, the member writes he has a 72 Charger. He has some small rust holes in it. Right. Do you think fiberglass cloth on both sides and body filler with a short fiber will patch these holes?
You thinking about selling it real quick?
I was thinking the same. Going, whoa,
That is a
quick fix.
That's a quick. I'm selling the car fix. It's not a long-term situation at all.
Exactly. That's there's a difference between patched and restored. I think far too often, that's the danger in a lot of recently restored cars that you can buy online or out there in the market, is that they haven't done the due diligence to actually do a complete restoration. But at a glance, they sure look pretty. And
Yeah, a magnet is your friend when you're.
Yeah. When you're
yeah, the magnet is your friend, and it's buyer beware. And no matter how much somebody says, "Oh yeah, no, it's rust free," and no, it has no rust, and the body's really solid and straight, don't just take their word for it. Whether it be a magnet, I know they have there's some great products out there that will actually measure the thickness of body fillers.
I use, well, the ones I were using were paint film thickness gauge, and body, it only goes up so 40, 50 mil, something like that. You get over that, then it won't read. But there's some that will probably read that.
And there are some body filler, electronic body filler gauges that will read, up to, quarter, 3/8 of an inch. Pat, you want to get the heater? Quick flip that. And they're relatively affordable. They're like, $120, and I know you guys are thinking $120 isn't cheap, but it's compared to the cost of buying a car that has a half inch of body filler in the quarter panels or something. It's an investment into making sure your life goes a lot easier, and it's the kind of thing, you got like a few friends, and maybe you can get like a couple guys that go in, and now it's only $30 a piece or whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of you own one that can borrow it from whatever, whenever you're going to go look at the latest, great, auto trader find. And
I would think 72. I mean, you should get patch panels for that charger.
Oh, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
For sure.
72 Charger is a very.
Well, I get the whole car.
It's
definitely where the rust is. You can probably get them.
Yeah, I'm sure you can get all that from AMD.
And bottom line, if you're going to repair rust holes in your charger, the best thing to repair rusted out metal is metal. And that means, I know not everybody wants to hear that. They want the quick, easy fix, because you can cut out fiberglass quicker than you can cutting out a piece of metal and welding it and hammering it and grinding it and refinishing it. But in the end, it's really not that much harder or longer to do the job right, as opposed to just kind of, spitting it out real quick. Because, and there's nothing worse, especially fiberglass to metal.
Yeah, it's just.
I don't have a lot of faith in it.
There's no strength.
When I was much younger, I did stuff like that, and and I can tell you from personal experience, it didn't last.
No.
I've seen all kinds of things stuffed in to fill holes. You want to go really quick and easy? That expanding foam works really awesome. You spray it in, let it harden, cut her off, and
that was kind of the same situation. I had a friend that had a 55 Chevy that, it was a beautiful car. And you put it up on the lift, and you start looking at it, and it's like, something's not right on the floorboard. And then you realize that, then you start pressing, it's like, that's really flexible. And then you do a little more heavier investigating. What they had actually done is got like that aluminum duct tape stuff, and they had covered the rust holes with that, and then to cover up their handiwork, they just sprayed lots of undercoating on the bottom side of the car. Now it's all disguised under undercoating, and if it wasn't for a couple of little telltale signs, I can see where most people would miss it. But it's those kind of things that buyer beware again. Where
sad to say that is still available today to buy. It's called auto body tape, and it's just adhesive back foil.
Yep.
It's there. Yeah.
And it's
still
not
out there. You can still buy it.
It's not a real. Yeah. Contact Terry if you're looking for. No, So, those kind of things you got to be aware of, and, use your better judgment. If it feels good to be true, there's usually a
Yes,
reason for it. But I've seen cars that were asking top dollar for, that when the owner, started noticing something 2 years later, and all of a sudden realized that there was one, a 69 Camaro that had actually 3 quarter panel skins all sandwiched on top of each other. But you didn't know it just looking at it. But as soon as you start, they say, well, geez, there's something wrong with this quarter. And you start taking off the first one. It's like, oh, there's a whole nother quarter panel underneath here. And then you take off that, and it's like, holy smokes,
Wow.
there's 3 quarter panel skins on this guy.
I've seen a 69 Camaro pace car. I don't know if it was replica or not, but neither here nor there. That a guy paid big dollars through one of the auctions, and I was in one of the shops I was in, and a body guy came over and just, come here and look at this. He took off the little vent in the door jamb,
Mm-hmm.
He said, look up in there. He could see sheet metal screws all the way down there. I'm like, are you kidding me? Guy spent 6 figures on this car, and he had no clue.
Yep.
No clue.
Yeah, and it's buyer beware on some of that stuff, and I can't stress, if you're gonna buy a car, don't just like walk around it, look casually.
No.
Really explore it, and there's plenty of tools now to make the whole process quicker and easier.
Try and get some history too.
Yep.
I mean, that's the thing.
Very good. All right, guys. I want to thank another hour has just flown by, and we can't thank you enough for coming out. And we'll be back again next month, and look forward to it. And thanks again, guys, for all your good questions. Thanks for the good interaction. We enjoyed it. Anything else, guys?
I think we're good.
All right.
Till next time.
Thank you. We'll see you again next month.